Me and Mong have an actual talk. We walked to the edge right by the water, and he plopped down with his whiskey bottle, patted the beach for me to sit next to him. What's going on? I said. Nothing, he said, digging his bottle into the sand so it would stand upright. I just felt like talking. I looked the guy over for a few seconds. You? He nodded. About what? I don't know, he said, glancing up at me. You could see in his eyes how wasted he already was from the whiskey. Just talk, like regular people. Like regular people, I repeated, grinning on the inside. Right, okay. I kicked a rock out of the way and sat down, still watching him. Took a swig of beer. Look how giant it is, he said, pointing his bottle at the ocean. Sometimes I look out there and I can't believe it. Ocean water makes up 70% of the Earth's surfaces, you know. Yeah, I said. I watched a small swell crumble near the shore and roll up the sand over clumps of seaweed and rocks and shells, then stuck back into itself. People spend so much time on trivial things they forget to look at the ocean. Look at it, Mexico. I am, I said. I felt mad weird how Mong was talking so much. I didn't really know how to react. Really look, though, he said. I tried for a sec, but I kept peeking at him every couple of seconds. I knew how people get when they drank. Like Diego, for example. He always wanted to fight. Didn't matter who was around, if it was a girl, an older person, or his own damn brother. He just had to yell or hit somebody. I tried with the ocean a few more times, but after a couple seconds, I'd be right back to peeping Mong again. He spit in front of him, said, when you look at the ocean, like you and me are right this second, you realize how small we are. I nodded my head some. There was a long silence, and then Monk smiled and said, I can't believe how good Rondell was. He laughed, tossed a bulb of seaweed into the water. I wonder what it feels like to slam one home. Shit, I said. I wouldn't even know. Me neither. Mong made like he was dunking a ball with his right hand and laughed a little more. Then he drank from his whiskey bottle. Seeing him laugh without being all psycho about it made me think how little I actually knew about the guy besides what I read in his file. I took a long pull of beer, imagining the dude as any regular kid I might pass in the hall at school. It was probably the first time I'd ever thought of Mong like that. Hey, Mong, I said, feeling the buzz move through my body into the tips of my fingers and toes. Yeah, I want to ask you something. All right. I picked up a smooth black rock, felt it between my thumb and forefinger. You're going to be straight with me, right? I'm drunk on whiskey, he said, holding up his bottle. I'd probably tell you anything right now. He took a long swig and made a big production out of how refreshing it was, even though he was still sort of cringing. I looked at the ocean for a few seconds, tried to think of how to put it. I looked at Mom. How sick are you, anyway? He turned to face me. Very sick. I was surprised he just came out and said it like that. I flung the rock in my hand toward the water. You're going to get better, though, right? His eyes went to the label on the bottle. They told me I'd have to get a new kidney. He paused, flipping the bottle so he could see the other side. But I was far down on the list. I stared at the side of his face, at his scars. I'd never known anyone who needed a new kidney before. I thought how maybe somebody in Mexico might have one for him. We could get him into a hospital first thing, and they'd operate and he'd be straight. Maybe that's why he wanted to go there in the first place. He took another sip of whiskey and then just sat there, staring at the quiet ocean. I don't really want to talk about that stuff, he said. Not tonight. Nah, it's cool, I said, picking up another flat rock. I skipped it across the water, watched it disappear into the little crumbling swell. Maybe you can ask me something else, he said. I nodded, thought about everything since we left the lighthouse, all the walking we'd done, and the tied-up store guy and the cave, and the guys who took our petty cash. Okay, I said. How could such a small Chinese kid fight like you so good? I'm not afraid to get hurt. Why not? He shrugged and then turned to look at me in the eye. I guess because I don't care what happens to me. I nodded and looked back to the ocean. It was a trip to hear somebody like Mong say the exact same thing I'd thought since what happened in Stockton. I wondered if almost every kid in a group home feels the same way. Stops caring what happens to them. Because first of all, they did something bad to get put away. And second, everybody in their family is disappointed. And third, you start to wonder if maybe that's really who you are. A group home kid. A fuck up. And once you start thinking you're a fuck up, you automatically stop caring what happens to you. But what about with those dudes today, man? I said. They were big as hell. They were big, Mong said. But they also knew they were wrong to take our money. They knew they deserved to lose. I picked up another rock, said, "Why'd you bite that one guy in the face?" Mong looked at me, fingering his brown tooth necklace. I couldn't think of what else to do. I frowned and shook my head. "You know that shit was kind of sick though, right?" He nodded. "I mean sick in the head, man. Psycho." "I understand. And you don't care if that's what people think of you? That you're fucked up or whatever?" He took a sip of whiskey, spit it in front of him, and went quiet for a few seconds like he was thinking about it. "Ever since I found out I was sick, I feel like I've been fighting," he said, staring out at the ocean. "Not just people either. Everything. I thought the more things I could wreck, the better I'd feel. But then today, afterwards, I think that was the last one." He turned to look at me. "I don't think I want to fight anymore." He looked back at the ocean. I took another sip of my beer, thinking about that. I felt the liquid drain down my throat and into my stomach. The beer was warm now, but I wasn't drinking it for taste. I was drinking it because of how it made me feel and how all the things I wanted to say came right into my head without me even trying. I turned to Mom. "So why'd you spit on me that first day?" "To find out who you were." "And who am I?" He smiled and picked up another bulb of seaweed. "You're a normal kid who did something very bad, and even though it was just a mistake, you're trying not to forgive yourself." I frowned at him and shook my head. "Nah, man, you got that part wrong. And you're trying to convince yourself you don't care, but you do care. You care a whole lot. I can see it." "Ha," I said, waving him off and making myself laugh. "That's some damn BS if I ever heard it." "It's what you hate most about yourself," Mong said, grinning at me. "You hate that you care so much." I laughed some more and sipped my beer. I tried to think up something I could say to show him how dumb as hell his opinions were, but nothing was coming to my head. So I just picked up a rock and fired it into a small wave. "I'm just being honest," he said. "Did I say too much?" I shrugged, said, "Whatever, dog. That's how you want to believe, then that's how you want to believe. Don't mean you're right, though." He held out his whiskey bottle. "Cheers?" "'Cause actually, if you want to know the truth, I don't give a fuck about anything." "Okay," Mong said, smiling big. "Come on, though. Cheers." I looked at his bottle, still shaking my head. I thought about not giving him a cheers. Thought about going back up with Rondell and letting Mong's drunk ass alone for the rest of the night. 'Cause come on, man. Dude was trying to talk like he knew me. He didn't know shit about me. Like Jaden even said, nobody knows anybody. But for whatever reason, I tapped his bottle with my can real quick and turned away, took another sip of warm beer. We both sat in silence for a while. I couldn't stop thinking of what he just said, though, so I decided to change the subject. "Yo, man, what's up with that flea-bitten tooth you always got around your neck?" He set down his bottle in the sand and held up the ugly brown thing so he could see it. "This? Yeah, man, I don't know if you noticed, but that shit isn't exactly fashionable." "You don't think so?" I pointed at it, said, "Look at it. What the hell's it supposed to be anyway?" "A tooth." "I know that, man. I'm saying whose is it, and why do you wear it all the time?" I figured it must have some important meaning or whatever, like it was his old man's or somebody who he'd beaten up before. Why else would a person wear a cavity-ass tooth like that? But he shrugged his shoulders at me and said, "I don't know whose it is. I found it on the ground somewhere like 3 years ago." He let it fall back to his chest and lifted his bottle to his lips again. I gave him a crazy-ass look, said, "You don't even know whose tooth it is?" He shook his head. "That's nasty, man." "Why?" I frowned at him, said, "Well, for one thing, it's unsanitary as hell." He smiled. "You've never had a good luck charm before?" "Not one that came out of some homeless person's damn mouth." He chuckled a little and said, "It's good luck. I've worn it every day since I found it." I thought about that for a sec, how his parents are dead and how he got in a group home and now he's sick. I told him, "You really think it's been lucky, though?" He nodded. "How?" "It's not about what happens to people," he said. "It's how they figure out what it means. It's helped me understand all the meaning." I took a drink, picked up another rock, and flung it at the tide, thinking about what he said. I wondered if that was what I should do, find meaning. After a short silence, Mong said, "I wanted to ask you something, too." "Okay." "What did you think about what my cousin said in the car when we were going to San Francisco?" I reached up and touched my cut, felt the swelling. "Which part? She said a lot." She was telling us the story about the man and the woman in China. I looked at Mong out of the corner of my eye, surprised he was bringing it up. I guess she was just saying a random story, I said. Do you agree with her, though, that it was true love? How would I know, man? I don't know nothing about no love. He frowned at me. Everybody knows about love, he said. I scooped a handful of dry sand and let it pour out slow through my fingers, shaking my head. He turned back to the ocean, took another swig of whiskey. People only think of romantic love, but that's just one kind. Love can be anything. Since I was a little boy staying here every summer, I've been in love with the ocean. I didn't say anything back. Dude wasn't even making sense anymore. Tonight, it's even bigger, he said. Tonight, I'm in love with the whole world. Everything of Earth, the dirt, the sand, the sky, the cave we went in the other night. He paused a sec and took another drink. Then he looked at me, all excited. Maybe when a person dies, they don't really die, Mexico. Maybe they just go back into the earth again. I shot him a confused look and took a sip of my beer. I didn't really know what he meant. What about you, Mong said. What do you love? I thought about his question for a sec. I actually took it serious. My family, I guess, especially my brother Diego, and my mom's. I looked at him, said, yeah, man, my family. He nodded. I pictured Diego's face lit up whenever he'd be reeling in a fish at the levee, or how he'd roll his eyes at me when he got dropped off at home from some white chick's car, when she'd make her window go down to say one last thing to him. I laughed a little under my breath, said, yo, I used to try and be just like my brother in every possible way. Used to copy his clothes style and how he did his hair, even copied the way he walked. But then I realized I was wasting my time, because no matter how hard I tried, Diego was always going to be Diego, and I was always just going to be me. Mong nodded his head and took a long sip of whiskey. We both looked back to the dark water. I scooped up another handful of sand and tried to think what else I could add, but everything I thought about had to do with Diego, so I just let the sand pour out and stared at this tiny light coming from a boat way the hell out there. When I looked back at Mong, I couldn't believe it. I saw tears coming down his scarred-up cheek. The dude was crying for no reason, or because he was so wasted he didn't know what the hell was happening anymore. It made me feel mad awkward, too, because whenever a dude cries near me, I can't really look at him. I feel like that's none of my business, and I can't talk to him either because all I'm concentrating on is not looking at him. But at the same time, I wondered if it was maybe because Mong was sick or something, or if he was thinking of what happened with his parents, or how it might be our last day in America. I snuck a little glance at him, and I don't even know why, tried to think if I'd ever seen an Asian person cry before. Mong wiped his face and took an especially long swig of whiskey. Then he leaned away from me and got sick. 2 crazy long heaves, and all his nasty-looking barf came spewing out of his mouth and soaked into the sand. But when he was done, he just looked right back at the ocean, smiling like nothing happened. He even laughed and took another sip from his bottle, 2 tears now dangling off his chin. Your kidneys? I said without looking at him. The whiskey, he said back. We both cracked up a little, and then Mong said, I'm happy you're here, Mexico. The first night I watched you sleep, I knew we'd be sitting here talking about these things. Oh yeah, I said, looking at him like he was crazy. He nodded. How's that? He shrugged. Sometimes I just know things. I frowned and pointed at his bottle. So how's that treating you, man? What? He said, looking at his whiskey. Being drunker than shit. No, I really know things, he said. Sometimes I think I've known every single thing that was going to happen to me for as long as I can remember, even the bad things. It's weird. I waved him off and went back to my beer, but I knew I was drunk as hell too, because my whole body felt fuzzy and I could barely focus on the ocean. It seemed like part of a movie, like the moonlight shining off the surface wasn't even real. It was special effects. The sand in my hands felt fake too. I also knew we'd end up being best friends like this, Mong said, before we went our separate ways. I shot him a crazy-ass look. Best friends, me and him? Now I knew his ass was wasted. How could 2 people who didn't know each other for shit, who'd been in more fights than damn conversations, even be friends? I know what you're thinking right now, too. I rolled my eyes. Said, yeah, what's that? That we don't know each other good enough to be friends. I frowned. Not even close, man. You sure? I didn't say anything back. Don't believe me, he said, but it's true. You and Rondell are the only friends I have in the whole world. I took a sip of beer, said, that's pretty sad, man. Sad but true. I spit toward the ocean. We sort of stopped talking, but we stayed sitting there and drinking a while longer. I almost wanted to tell him he was me and Rondell's friend too, but I didn't. I just stared out over the ocean, trying to do it like he did, like I was in a trance and I was in love with it, even though it wasn't a girl or even a person. But after a while, my eyes started drooping and I almost passed out sitting up. Soon as I'd close my eyes, though, everything would start spinning like crazy because I was so drunk and I'd have to jerk them back open. Yo, I'm so faded, I told him. I gotta go crash. He nodded without turning to me, said, I'm gonna stay here. I'm not tired yet. Okay, I said, stumbling to get up. Hey, he said. What? He stared at me for a few seconds and then looked down at the sand, shaking his head. Nothing. I shrugged, standing over him. I wondered what would happen once we got to Mexico. Would he get even sicker down there? Could he even die from his kidneys? Or would he go to the hospital and get a new one? It's weird. Even though we'd been in a couple fights and I still didn't trust him that much, I thought he totally deserved to get better. It didn't seem right for someone to get shot by their own dad, get bad kidneys, and then that's it. There had to be more in his future, another chance. I stumbled up to where Rondell was sleeping, put my bag under my head, and laid down. I let my eyes close up shop and tried not to spin. A couple times I had to open them back up quick, though, because I knew if the world turned even one more rotation, I'd be sick. The last time I opened them, I looked up and saw Mong was up sitting by the big boulders, straight down from the blue vacation house he used to stay at with his dad. He was carving something into one of the boulders with a small rock. I watched him for a few minutes, thinking about what a strange kid he was, sick as hell but still beating up guys twice his size, shot in the face, in love with the ocean. But watching him scrape a rock into a boulder over and over like that, with total concentration, I don't know, man. For the first time, I saw him in a totally different way. He almost seemed like a little kid, a sad one who'd lost his parents, one that didn't have no friends at the playground and just stood there watching while all the other kids were laughing and chasing each other around the sandbox and jumping off the bars. I tried to think how it'd be if my own dad shot me or if I had bad kidneys. I let my head fall back on my bag thinking about those things. I decided first thing in the morning I'd go see what Mong scraped into that rock. And right then my eyes closed up, and I couldn't even tell you if I started spinning that time because right away I passed the hell out.